Well, 2 games into the championship season now, and Sunderland, Burnley, Bristol City, and Blackburn Rovers have all had fantastic starts to the season. Sunderland with back-to-back wins to nil, 2-0 at Cardiff, and of course yesterday's emphatic 4-0 demolition of Sheffield Wednesday. Burnley, by the way, 4-1 opening night, Monday night winners at Luton Town before dispatching Cardiff City by 5-0. Bristol City as well have 4 points to their name, and so too do Blackburn Rovers. Watford as well on maximum points with a great start under Tom Cleverley. But which of those sides have the staying power to remain in the upper echelons of the league, and which sides are just enjoying accruing a positive, healthy number of points at this embryonic stage of the championship campaign? Plenty to discuss then on this championship podcast. Yes, welcome along to the EFL Debate Championship podcast. You can get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify, because that would really help us out a lot, and leave us a review or a comment if you fancy. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by Jonny Hawley from Roker Report of Sunderland. Jonny, thanks so much for joining us. Well, what's that for the season? 4-0 victory over Sheffield Wednesday. You must be over the moon with that one.
Yeah, I'll certainly take them when they come along. Absolutely. And they, not too regular at the stadium. I like those kind of results. So, really, really pleased.
Sure. I mean, Alan, you did that without Alan Brown, who I was kind of expecting to be a really big player this season in terms of the experience and the grit and the drive that he was going to bring. But it was another midfielder who stood out in his absence in 17-year-old Chris Rigg. What a performance he put in yesterday.
Yeah, it was absolutely unbelievable, the performance. To say that he's a 17-year-old kid, and I mean, I know he's played football for us last season, obviously, and he, he's had the odd goal or two as well. So he's not a complete stranger to the senior setup. But blimey, I mean, to absolutely stamp your authority on the game against, and let's not forget as well, Sheffield Wednesday, no mugs under Danny Rowe, fresh off a resounding win at Plymouth. So to see him put in that level of performance was not so much a shock, but certainly a very, very pleasant surprise.
Yeah, certainly was. I think what really interested me was how you had Chris Rigg and Joe Bellingham really pressing up amongst with Elisa Mienda, and the pressing was so impressive, I thought, because Sheffield Wednesday, when Barry Bannan was given time and space last week, as we saw, Sheffield Wednesday were able to put some of their patterns of play together, and they absolutely dominated Plymouth Argyle. But I guess Sunderland's quality of pressing meant they weren't really able to implement their game plan, which is really testament to the work Reggie Libri has done on or Regis Libri, as I'll try and start calling him, on the training ground.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, because the biggest thing that we, as as a fan base, were kind of really, really disappointed with it the second half of last season, which was the real reason for that poor run of results, was just how passive we were. On the ball, we weren't creating anything and not being aggressive enough, but off the ball as well. I mean, you wouldn't even say we pressed badly. We just didn't press. We were happy to sort of sit back and let teams come at us and try and pick them off, I suppose. But Labrise has come in, and all through the summer you could see the building blocks being put in place. There was sort of the green shoots of recovery in some of the pre-season games, but that high press, aggressive, really, really forward thinking, happy to get up the pitch. That approach seems to be what he's going to be looking to implement this season, and it's just really, really pleasing to be able to see it come together so early, because how many times, Sunderland fans, we've kind of got 5, 6, 7 games in and gone, so what are we trying to do here? Like, what's the plan? Whereas to see it come in from day one is, it's fantastic.
Certainly is. Talk to me about Elisa Mienda, Jonny, because I think it was a Spain under-19s international. He signed last summer in 2023. Didn't make much of it. I don't think he even featured last season. Might have been injured, I think. But I think lots of people, and still is to an extent, this discourse around Sunderland have got to sign a centre forward, and I still do think that you could do with one more. I know you're after Alexander Mendy, supposedly from Caen, but I guess it's making that conversation a little bit less pressured, a little bit less heated, with Elisa Mienda starting the season and getting 2 goals on Sunday.
Yeah, and you're right to identify that we do still need at least one to come in the door, I think. If we're serious about trying to stay in the top 6 and be in the hunt for promotion come the end of the season, we need more bodies, because we just haven't got enough, and we certainly don't have the experience. But Maenda, I mean, he's a breath of fresh air compared to what we were seeing from the options last season. And I thought he was a little bit unlucky last season, because he ended up going out on loan to Hibernian for the second half of the season and just never seemed to settle there. Right. It wasn't really seen as a key part of the plan. And obviously at Sunderland, he just never got given the minutes. I think there was a real reluctance from all of the revolving door of head coaches that we had to see any of the young lads get a run in that number 9 position. But Labrise has come in and he's been pretty firm with the fact that Maenda's, out of the people who were at the club, he's his choice for who he wants to lead the line. Certainly at the start of the season, and it was clear, the end of pre-season when you're playing what is effectively your kind of dress rehearsal 11s.
Yeah.
Maenda was getting the nod, so I think more than anything that's going to give him the confidence, because if you day to day, week to week, haven't got a clue whether you're going to be in the team, out the team, on the bench, not even in the squad, it doesn't do anybody any good. Whereas Maenda, he's clearly got some talent. I mean, the 2 goals demonstrate that perfectly. But yeah, given a run in the side, I think he can certainly make a big impact.
Certainly can. Do you know what I'd hope, Johnny, is that if you do sign another striker, Maenda stays in the 11 initially, because I always think when you bring in a high-profile striker, you want to make the guy who's playing in their position, especially if they're in form, feel like it means something for them to play well and score goals, or do their job. And
Yes.
Then you've got this lovely dilemma where, if Maenda drops off, you've got someone else to come in, but it feels like the other players feels like they've really got to work for their spot, and the player coming in feels that way. And then the young lad that you've got that's playing well still feels like he's got an opportunity. So that would be my hope for sure. Clark and Roberts then, Johnny. It feels like we're going to come back to talking about that dream wide duo, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Patrick Roberts especially deserves a real shout out here, because he really struggled last season more than basically anybody, I would say, because we all saw in 2022-23 how good he can be. A fit and firing Patrick Roberts is a real weapon, but struggled last season. And the start of this season, the first 2 games, he's really looked at a man with a serious point to prove. He floated in a lovely delivery for the opening goal against Cardiff. And then same thing again yesterday, that first goal. Roberts, obviously the movement within the box they must have worked on that on the training ground. They sort of blocked off the space for Dennis Serkin to run into, but Roberts put the ball into the perfect area, lovely flight on it. And I think just in his general play, you can see that he means business. He's hungry and he gets on the ball and he's direct. Whereas a lot of times last season, not just Roberts, everybody, they were floundering a bit directionless. But he, I think, exemplifies the changes that we've seen at the start of this season, where he really looks purposeful. He looks fit. The whole team look very fit, which you need to be to play a high press. But yeah, Roberts deserves credit. And Jack Clark, I mean, what do you say at this point? He's just unbelievable. Every time he gets the ball, you think something's going to happen. Defenders can't live with him. And crucially for, like a young player with promise, now he's got so much end product. He gets the ball in the box and he picks out the right pass. If he's going to take a shot on, he picks the corner. He gets the ball hard and low across the keeper. He does everything you want from an attacking inside forward. And I'm counting down the minutes and the seconds until the transfer window closes, because if he's still at our club at the end of this transfer window, we could do some really big things.
I think so. I want to talk to you about Luke O'Nien, Johnny, because what I loved about his game on Sunday was he actually made, in the first minute, I think it was, like a bit of a misplaced pass that led to a possible chance. And I think for a lot of centre-backs in that position, they might have they might have panicked, or they might have gone under, or they might have stopped trying to play certain passes. But what I loved about Luke O'Nien, and it comes back to what we were talking about in the season preview podcast, which is he's just got this mentality where everything he does, he tries to make the best of it, and he backs himself, and I love that about him. And I think his distribution improved over the course of the afternoon. So he was brilliant, Luke O'Nien, I thought.
Yeah, and again, I think you've hit the nail on the head there with the thing about his mentality and his attitude, because it's not the first time he's done it. Like, we've seen it a lot of times where he'll, particularly early on in the game, he might make a daft little mistake or just lose concentration for a second or whatever it is. And as you say, so many players in the same situation, the head drops a bit, the confidence starts to drain out here, you wilt a little bit. O'Nien it's like he just resets his memory and just forgets that it even happened, and that's it, full steam ahead, and he just attacks the rest of the 90 minutes. And again, yesterday that was a great example of Luke O'Nien at his absolute best, because he didn't shirk the responsibility at all. He was still happy to bring the ball out of defence, play those longer diagonal passes which he's got in his locker now. Obviously contributed with a goal, albeit not the most difficult of finishes that he'll ever have in his career, and just another all-round action performance where, if you went into the game blind and somebody said one of these players is Luke O'Nien, but you didn't know which one it was, you'd tell within 10 minutes, because you'd just see the one who's chucking himself into everything at 110%. Yeah. You'd be like, there he is, I see him.
That's Luke. I'm going just before you go, Jonny, I'm going to bring in Natalie Bromley from No Nay Never, from the No Nay Never podcast on Burnley, because I wanted to get your take, Natalie, on I guess Sunderland from the outside, because they've obviously been dominant so far. They've won 2-0 at Cardiff. They thrashed Sheffield Wednesday. Ahead of Saturday's game, are you sort of a bit apprehensive about facing Sunderland?
Yeah, I really am, actually. Just bear with me a second. This is wholly unprofessional, but I just realised that my battery's about to go, and I don't want you to be cutting off in your prime. One second, Steam. 1 second.
No problem.
Here we go. Look at this. Always the professional, never at all over the place. Right. Yes, I am. I am genuinely. That said, I wasn't. I was apprehensive about Luton. I thought that was a really tough fixture for us to go to, away from home at the beginning of the season. I was worried about Cardiff. I knew that they had some challenges scoring goals, but from what I'd understood, their defence was pretty solid. So I was concerned about both of those. Sunderland does look a little bit of a different kettle of fish, and I think this will be a real test for us. The Championship every season throws up some, not surprise package, and Sunderland isn't a surprise package, of course it's not, but somebody who you wouldn't necessarily think are going to run away with the league or do what Ipswich did last year. And Sunderland could very easily be that team. I think I'm looking forward to the game. I think it's going to be a real test. I'm nervous. If we win against Sunderland, or we win convincingly, just give us the title now. Let's just not bother with the rest of the season, because we don't. No, but sorry, yeah. That's slightly flippant, but yeah, it's it will be a test. The next 2 games will be a test for us. Actually, we've got the East Lancs derby after that as well. So my happiness might just.
Jonny, how are you feeling about it as a Sunderland fan?
I was going to say, if Burnley are feeling apprehensive, can you imagine how we feel seeing them stick 9 goals in 2 games? Yeah. Blimey. I mean, the thing is, I think you're right about the fact that we could potentially, we've got it in us to do a sort of Ipswich kind of season, but we're certainly not a team where you're going to look at us and go, yeah, definitely going to win the league. Like, we need a lot of things to come together. And I think it's going to be a similar story at the weekend, where if we get off to a good start and we're on the front foot early, then I think we could really cause you some problems. But we are still a very young team. I feel like I say that every time I ever speak on here, like we're so young. And if you start to get a bit of a foothold in the game and put us under a little bit of pressure and play around the press a little bit, that's when I think we could start to, really kind of crumble, because so far this season, it's kind of been it's easy street in a sense, because we haven't had to change our style of play yet, because nobody scored against us. But if somebody else gets the first goal, then it's a very, very different game.
Yeah.
And with the quality Burnley have got, I mean, you're going to, you were causing teams in the Premier League problems towards the back end of last season. So you're certainly going to be causing teams at this level problems.
That's generous. Thanks.
I'm trying to be optimistic for if we ever get back up there to think about what we
Did we not give them hot showers or something? Did we maybe not give them a good enough brew at half time? What are these problems you mentioned? I don't recall seeing those last year.
Rubbish speakers in the dressing rooms.
Yeah, it's like, what is this nonsense? I think the thing for us at the moment is that as at today, our squad is ridiculous. Gabs and I have already had this conversation. Our squad is ridiculous. The quality is ridiculous. But that has to change. We cannot go into the 1st of September with 36 men in this squad and the quality that we've got. There will be players who will go. That said, out of the players who started and featured at Cardiff at the weekend, I'm not entirely sure how many of those, if any, will go. I think you're probably looking at the players who haven't yet, who didn't feature. So Trafford, what's he called? My brain's gone. Anas Zaroury. My brain's gone mental for a second. Anas Zaroury and probably Sander Berge. Now, none of them were playing on Saturday. So you'd think that in that team there are enough players that still have that quality. But I think that's our biggest challenge at the moment, is that slight uncertainty, as we don't know who's going to be left. Will we sell all of these amazing players? And actually we end up with quite an average side when it comes to September. Who knows? But yeah, we'll see.
Jonny,
one thing I would say, and Jonny just mentioned that then about not knowing how to adapt their style. The one thing I would say to you is that I'm not yet seeing this warning shot that Fulham and Bournemouth fans gave us to say, oh, it's really boring football under Parker. He'll just score one goal, they take the foot off the gas, and then that's it. Really? No, we have been relentless and ruthless for 2 full games. So yeah, if we sniff any of that nervousness, we had 4 shots on target on Saturday and we scored 5, but obviously one wasn't ours. But we actually didn't do that much, but we didn't need to. We didn't really need to get out of second gear. And every time we got a shot, we just scored from it. That's the key difference, I think, in our squad. It's that absolute clinical finishing.
Clinical edge. Jonny, with that in mind, what do you think the score's going to be today? Do you think Sunderland are going to be the first team to score against Sunderland this season?
What do I think the score's going to? I mean, trying to predict the Sunderland score, you may as well just, start chucking Scrabble tiles on the table and go, hey, you go pick one with a number on, and then what's it going to be?
I was going to say Scrabble tiles and just give you letters.
Yeah, bear with us. Let us finish it.
Stones, Jonny.
But no, I mean, my heart obviously is saying Sunderland at home. We're on a good run. Yeah, we can win the game, but I think going with my head, it's going to be a really, really tough ask to do anything against what looks like a really strong Burnley side. So I could see there being goals in the game as well, because we do like to press high and we are at home. So I could see it being a sort of high score, because it was similar last time we played each other at the stadium. I think it was 4-2, wasn't it, in the end?
Yeah, it was a really crazy game, that game.
That second half has really taught us a bit of a lesson. I could see it going a similar sort of way and being like a high score and win for Burnley, because we've definitely got goals in us, at home. But we might not have conceded yet, but it'll come, because it's Sunderland. It will come, and when it comes, it could easily come all at once. So, yeah, trepidation, I think, might be the word of the day for Sunderland going into the weekend.
Trepidation. There we go.
Go for it.
Jonny, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks as always.
Top man.
Cheers.
Natalie, just talk me through those dominant sort of 4-1 and 5-0 victories for Burnley. I imagine that's giving you a lot of confidence going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, it has. I think more than anything, it's highlighted just the gap between the Premier League and the Championship is getting stronger. I mean, that's been something that we've talked about, and that's the narrative that's been pushed for probably a decade now. I think that levelled off for a while with the increased parachute payments and a couple of stronger teams that come into the end of their Premier League cycle and going down to Championship. It did level itself out a little bit, but it definitely feels at the moment like that gap has increased again. When we went down 2 years ago, when the end of the Daesh reign came about, we'd been in the Premier League for 8 seasons at that point, and I just thought, we bounced straight back up. We were only gone a year. Last season, within a couple of games, I was genuinely horrified at the gap and the improvement in the Premier League in just a year away. teams like Brighton and Brentford and those kind of teams that on our day we could beat or just try and compete with suddenly light years ahead of us. And it was like you were looking around and thinking, I don't know who we're supposed to be trying to get above in this league. And it doesn't surprise me that the 3 promoted sides went straight back down again. We are in this position at the moment where we are stuck in that gap. We are, and listen, forgive me, but it's very difficult to talk in these terms without sounding unbelievably arrogant. And that's not a place where this is coming from. But the reality is that we've played a very strong Luton side with most of their Premier League squad, and they've got the stability of the same manager. We've got new players, well, some new players. We've got a new manager. We played a Cardiff side who've finally found some stability after a few years of swapping their managers around, and a promising manager that the fans seem to like, who have started to really shore up at the back and not concede many goals. And we've just blown them out of the water in both 2 games. So we are stuck in this position where we are just way too strong for the Championship with this current squad. That's the caveat. But just can't quite find that next step up that we need to stay in this current model and this current trend of Premier League.
What I'm really curious about, Natalie, is the system, which is kind of like I would say a 4-4-2 out of possession, but actually in possession it feels like a kind of diamond midfield, because you've got Josh Cullen dropping deeper, and then basically whenever you win the ball, Josh Brownhill charges forward, and sometimes even higher than the strikers. And I do kind of think, given that it's not like your wingers are wide midfielders that sort of tuck in and become part of the midfield, they are wingers. And so I kind of feel like it's really funny how you've made it work with those sorts of results without, you wouldn't really say you've got an orthodox midfield, which is kind of what I'm really sort of curious about, I guess.
Explain what you mean by we don't have an orthodox midfield.
So if I'm looking at the midfield, so you've got 2 wingers, right? Classic wingers who both very, very attack minded. You've got 2 up top, and basically Josh Brownhill in possession is kind of like a number 10 because he's breaking into goal scoring. So it's pretty much it feels like it's just Josh Cullen in midfield. And I'm just so I'm impressed in a way that you've been able to make it work and be as potent as you have, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's probably what I've seen from the Championship in the last 2 seasons. I don't necessarily think it's as clear cut as that. There have been times, particularly in the Luton game, where it has felt a little bit more traditional, where they have sat in the positions, they've sat more together, and Brownhill and Cullen have been more together as a traditional central midfielder. But yeah, you're right. When it comes to an attack, they do branch out, and I think under Company, and again what we're seeing under Parker, is we're seeing not just an increased technical ability and strength and speed from the players. We're seeing tactical minds of managers that other managers in the Championship just haven't got on to yet. And I mean this with respect to the Championship teams. Some of the teams have got coaches and managers, and their setup just isn't quite as sophisticated yet, because those managers cost money, the same as those attacking players cost money. If you get those managers who can think that brilliantly and who can adapt in play and who can find really modern, creative ways to win a game, some of the managers in our league, they're just not thinking on that same level, or they're playing a more traditional style of Championship football. So they could study Burnley, they can see what they think we're going to do, but they don't necessarily have a plan to counteract that. So I think that's when you say how we've been impressed that we've made that work. Not a lot of that is down to creativity in your tactics and just being way, way, way advanced in terms of how you play. But a lot of that is just down to the fact that we're better in every department in this league than a lot of our counterparts, and they don't know how to play against us yet, both tactically and physically.
Yeah, because you lost Wilson Odobert last week to Tottenham Hotspur, but you've got another prodigiously talented winger in Luca Koleosho, who produced a really fizzing strike. I think it might have been the second goal. Second goal against Cardiff. And he looks like a real prospect, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was one of our standout players last season. So he got injured in the early stage. I think it was just before Christmas last year, and he was a real loss. But Odobert stepped in from him, actually. So Luca Koleosho, we thought he was going to be an absolute standout performance in the Premier League, and we lost him really early, which was a bit of a shame. But Odobert was fantastic. I kind of thought we weren't going to be able to keep both of them, albeit Audebert in that Luton game had played the number 10 role as opposed to an out-and-out winger. So I think it looks like if we'd have kept both of them, we could have actually played both of them, which is ridiculous. How can you have a championship game and play Audebert and Koleosho in the same pitch? That's blatantly nonsense and annoying for the rest of the league, I would imagine. But that's the thing at the moment. Burnley have developed a business model under our new owners of widening their scouting network, going all across Europe and South America and other yet untapped markets for really talented players that they can bring to England, who they can develop, expose them to the market, give them brilliant training and coaching, and get them to play in these leagues, and then sell them for a profit. We understand from a business model that our players are by far and above our strongest asset. We don't have millions in advertising revenue or sponsorship deals or anything else that you can stick your name onto it. We can't generate image rights as well as the Premier League clubs can, the global brands. But we are starting to work on that. We're working on the American market. We're working on what we can sell. And the fact that we just sold Audebert for a reported £32 million when we got him last year, 2 years ago, and we're just selling for that. There will be many more in our squad that we will be able to do so. None more so by
profit. What was the profit you got for Audebert?
Forgive me. I will just do a very quick.
Just roughly.
I seem to think we got him for 12.
12. Okay, so it's about 20 million.
I think so. Just bear with me because I'm just not 100% sure.
I was going all Paxman on you there.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I want. Listen. And there'll be Burnley fans just screaming at the thing saying it was this amount. For some reason, I've got 12 in my head, but it might have been slightly less than that. But it was definitely a decent profit.
Sure.
It was so Audebert was brought in that time when we lost all of our Premier League players and company went on a shopping spree. And quite frankly, he bought that many players. I've genuinely forgotten how much everybody was. But yeah, that's the thing. It's a really decent profit to get that money in for him. It means that we are selling players, so we're reducing that unmanageable squad. We are getting our finances in order in the event that we don't go up this season, which looks in these early days unlikely, but you never know. We might finish third and miss out on the playoffs. You just don't know what's going to happen. But obviously, if we don't go up this year, we're in a loss year because everybody in the championship's in a loss year. So we then have to really keep an eye on the fair play, the financial side of it, because we could be in trouble if we don't. So things like that, we have to be making sure that we take advantage of those offers. There's not that many occasions where a Burnley player can be sold for 32 million. Really
it's not too many occasions where we've seen that, have there?
No.
What was I going to say? Cullen and Brownhill, Natalie, they had a bit of a relationship going in the title-winning season, and they seem to have rekindled that this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a bit of a funny one, really, because as with a lot of the challenges that we faced last season, Company very much tinkered with his squad at the beginning of the season. He made some very bizarre personnel charges. Now, listen, let's not be unfair there. Vincent Kompany's job as a manager is to assess what his squad looks like going into that championship season. He decided in the summer that the squad wasn't good enough for the Premier League, so he brought other players in, and he did dump a lot of the players who got in promotion. Cullen was one of those casualties actually in the early stage. I think he struggled in the first few games to adapt to life in the Premier League and got dropped relatively early. And we didn't see him again till towards the end of the season, which was a surprise. But Cullen and Brownhill together in the Championship is just such a strong partnership. They do perform very, very well. And yeah, they just complement it. And you forget, I mean, we've still got Sander Berge to come in if we don't sell him. And that's a big if.
I feel like you might sell Sander Berge.
Yeah, of course we will. Of course we will. Is it Berge or Berg? I never know. Is it Berge?
Maybe Sander Berger.
Sander Berger.
Yeah, not sure.
Sander, yeah. I mean, that's actually a real shame because he was our player of the season last year, and I was really looking. But he's way too good for the Championship. Like it's ridiculous to expect him to play a Championship season, but that's a real shame because I really liked him last year. But I think if we do sell him, I think we probably need another central midfielder as a backup to come in, actually. So that's the thing as well. It's like we keep talking about reducing this squad and reducing profits, but there are a couple of positions, if we do sell, we are going to have to buy a couple in before we finish. So
36 players just isn't enough, Natalie.
Bring me more. Must have more players. It's really bad.
like
Yeah,
Dudley in Harry Potter.
36, but I had 37 last year. I want more. Yeah, no. That's quite interesting. That's going to stick as that. That's the first time on any of the content I've ever done that I've been called Dudley.
I'm glad it's a rarity, Natalie.
Yeah. When I get called that from now on, I'm blaming you. You're going to
Oh God!
Gab, what have you done? What have you done? Yeah, all good. Sorry, where were we?
I've completely. So Lucas Perez, Natalie, talk to me about his impact.
Yeah, great. So not a player I knew anything about. Obviously, not many of us knew. Excuse me, before we signed him. We've kind of got used to Burnley now signing obscure European players who we don't really know an awful lot about, and that's fine. Because it seems to be working very well to a degree. There's a couple of exceptions to that. I was gutted when Charlie Taylor left, but he went with a lot of goodwill from me. I think 2 years ago, I think he must have been gutted when all of our Premier League side got sold and nobody came in for him. He then got dropped to second behind Ian Maatsen in Vincent Kompany's championship winning season. We tried to sign Maatsen last year and he didn't come to us. He stayed at Chelsea, then subsequently went out on loan. But Charlie Taylor was asked to fill in, and then when we didn't secure Maatsen, Kompany came out in the press saying we'll look to rectify the left back situation in January. Poor Charlie Taylor was like, great, thanks. And my goodness, did he put a shift in last season? He was so professional, he worked so hard. So I was gutted when he left. Perez has come in and has looked just a younger, sharper version of him. He's physically very strong, comfortably gets forward. A couple of times in the first 2 games, Cardiff and Luton, he has shown to just lose possession in the slightly precarious position, but he's so fast that he's just got back and recovered it quite well. So he's one of those left backs that I wouldn't have particularly many concerns about him going forward if he needs to, because I think he'll be able to recover from that situation. But he's got some. Did you see the pass that he made for Brownhill's opening goal, the goal against Luton in the 6 minutes against Luton?
Oh yeah, just down the line and it's
straight in. Yeah. So his direct his ability to find that direct pass and meet it, we've seen a couple of times in the first 2 games, and yeah, that's what you want, isn't it? If you can. I like this about this Burnley side, by the way, Gabs. It's like they're not rigidly stuck to one system, which is what Kompany's problem was last season. They're not afraid to go very direct if the situation calls for it. And Perez, even it was his first game, his first 5 minutes, and he saw an opportunity and we scored from it. You know,
well, I think, Natalie, it's partly a system thing where, because your wide players are so far apart, you've got 2 up top and you've got Brownhill pressing up as almost like a third forward. Yeah. I think that lends itself sometimes to longer passes as opposed to short, quick combination play. I don't feel like I've seen much of that from you this season, as much as those diagonals over the top or those sort of longer passes and I think when you've played against disorganized sides, which Luton and Cardiff have been, I think you've been able to absolutely expose them ruthlessly. What I'm really interested to see if when you face a side that's got maybe a little bit of organization about them, whether you can bring together some of those shorter passes that you might need to sort of open them up.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always a danger with that, isn't it? That short pass when you can't quite break down a stubborn midfield. And my goodness, there are a lot of those midfields in the Championship that really have that strong physical presence. They pack their midfield. They don't necessarily have wingers to be able to play as true wingers out wide. So it's all very compact in the middle. There's always a danger that becomes side to side passes and gets a little bit frustrating. That said, as well as that diagonal pass, we've got speed. We've got speed in our squad, and we've got players who aren't afraid to run.
Lyle Foster,
yeah, exactly. So they've got the strength, and so you've got your tricky players. You've got your Coley O'Shaws, you've got your Manuel Bensons, you've got those kind of players, and to an extent, Coutinho as well, who are a little bit more skillful, and they can just dance around people and just do a quick turn and off they go. But then you do also have, like you say, you've already highlighted that. Foster, Zeki Amdouni, who came on, he's had a bit of time off because he's
that 4th goal, what a thunderous strike that was.
And he'd been on the pitch, less than 5 minutes. He was just like, excuse me, I'm here. I'll just but he's also in that number 10 mold, he's also physically very strong and very quick. So we can, I think from my perspective, we can match Championship defenders for athleticism and physicality. and we can beat them for speed. So yeah, one of the things I've liked a lot is Scott Parker's talked a lot about don't get married to trying to figure out how you think Burnley are going to play and what system we're going to do. I'm telling you now, it will be different every single game. And we saw it again against Cardiff at the weekend. Quick note on that, though, is it didn't work in the first half. So I think that was something that we needed to be very mindful of. The first half, we were sat there going, yeah, this isn't working. Whatever you did here, wrong. Like, let's do that. But in the second half, we just switched a few things around and played a slightly different direct style of play and just broke them down. It's unfortunate for Cardiff because it was quite a difficult own goal that set us
well
up.
once you can see that sort of own goal, I think Cardiff made a lot of errors that possibly helped you a little bit, but when you score 5 goals, I'm not gonna
we'd have just won 3-0 rather than 5-0. I think the win was always inevitable. I think the number of goals flattered us. I think the mistakes that, particularly when their heads went down, I think the mistakes that Cardiff made contributed to us scoring 5 as opposed to our ruthlessness. But I think even if they'd have not let their heads go down, we probably would have still scored 3. So
confident for the rest of the season then, Natalie, just finally?
Yeah, very.
Brilliant.
And nothing that I've seen so far has changed that. Obviously, as I've already mentioned, squad depending. If we suddenly sell 5 of our top players between now and then and our squad looks a bit average, then I might revisit that. But from what I've seen so far, Burnley will be pushing for top 2 without a shadow of a doubt. And I think it would be an underachievement if we don't.
Let's hope that's the case. Natalie, all best for the rest of the season and hopefully see you back
Gabs.
in this podcast soon.
You will.
Top stuff. Cheers, Natalie. Take care. So before I bring in my next guest, Annie Harris, I wanted to bring in a YouTube, a video sent to me by Sam Ucko from WD18 fans.
Hi Gab, thank you so much for having me on again, and apologies I can't join live today. But in terms of my thoughts on Watford 3, Stoke City 0, and the start to the season so far for Watford, I don't think many Watford fans would have predicted it to go this well, to be honest with you. It's been 3 really strong performances. Probably the weakest of the 3 came against Millwall, where I thought there were some flaws throughout the performance, and on another day we potentially lose that game, and we sort of rode our luck throughout. But I thought that Watford showed really good desire, energy, and a real sense of physicality to ultimately get over the line and win that 3-2 against the Millwall side, who it seems to have started slowly losing again yesterday, but I'm sure that they will pick up throughout the season. Midweek against MK Dons with a 5-0 victory. Tom Ince scoring a hat-trick. Great to see Quadro Bar getting on the score sheet as well. And someone who I know you're a fan of, Gab. Someone who I forgot was almost a forgotten man at Vicarage Road. I'd forgotten that he even played for us, to be honest with you. But he's come back in this season and has looked really, really sharp. And then in terms of the Stoke game yesterday, Watford did start slowly. We weren't that great for the first half. I thought both teams weren't fully at their best, and it was really, really scrappy affair, almost what you see with what you could almost envisage with Stoke 5-10 years ago, with the physicality, the long throws, the corners. But Watford rode the storm really well in that first half, and someone who was at the centre of that, who arguably has been Watford's best player this season, was Matty Pollock at the back, who won absolutely everything in the air. He's been an absolute warrior so far, and he's definitely been the standout for me so far, along with Edo Kiembe, who in the second half managed to get a brace to go alongside a goal from Ryan Andrews, one of our own, scoring in front of the referee as well. There's nothing better than seeing that. So yeah, it's definitely been a really, really good start, but it is really early days. We know the Championship is a long season, and Tom Cleverley still needs support in the transfer market. I think probably the biggest concern so far is, despite Watford scoring 11 goals across 3 games this week, the lack of a number 9 is still concerning. Vacuum Bio has probably been a bit of a weak link so far, in terms of he's struggling to really get into the games and impose himself on games. However, the likes of Militarievich, Quadro Bar have come on and had impacts. However, I do think we need to have someone who can come in, hit the ground running and score a lot of goals. There's still a lot of transfer speculation up in the air as well. In terms of Yasser Spring might still be leaving. Wesley Hoot, there are still rumours that he could be off as well, despite him being injured. So I think with this Watford squad, it's a case of just getting to the end of the transfer window, bringing a few more names in, probably trying to keep hold of Hoot. I think Cleverley said he's accepted a spree will go already, and just almost, I think the end of that transfer window will represent I think we can just purely focus on what's on the pitch and the football as well, but it's 100% a really good foundation for Watford to build off, and let's hope that Tom Cleverley's supported and he's able to continue building. Anyway, cheers Gab, and appreciate you having me on again. Cheers.
Sam Ucko speaking there from the WD18 fans channel. Very encouraging for the Hornets, isn't it? They've had a great start under Tom Cleverley. But so have Bristol City with 4 points from their first 2 games. And I'm delighted to be joined by Annie Harris from AH Robins Talk on YouTube. Annie, very dramatic game, that 4-3 win over Millwall. But what really stood out to me is, I guess, that relationship between Max Bird and Sinclair Armstrong.
Yeah, but kind of two new signings, with Bird coming in January technically, but signing, playing for us this start of the new season, and Sinclair Armstrong, who I expected to have a bit of a slow, him in particular, have a bit of a slow start, but it's not been the case. He's really taken to the system quite well. The Manning clearly trusts him. Started both league games so far, and both of them have been really good. And yeah, the link up between them is fabulous. Max Bird has a really good pass on him, and that was that second goal we scored against Millwall yesterday, where he's kind of knew where Sinclair Armstrong was. He just had one look up, there he was, and picked out the perfect ball, Max Bird, and he's got that quality about him. Sinclair Armstrong has that movement, has that physicality. Then yeah, we look quite good going forward, which is a quite drastic change from last season. And despite Max Bird, who I thought would have been brought in to be a kind of Matty James replacement in that number 6/8 position, playing either alongside Jason Knight or Joe Williams or whoever it is, whether that's in the 3 or a double pivot. He's started the season in the 10 position, and it's been outstanding. It's linked up, as you said, with Armstrong and Mayulu as well, and with the wide players drifting, wide and inside. Really impressed with him so far.
Yeah, absolutely. What I really like about this Bristol City side, very early days, of course, is that if you're facing a deep defensive block, you've got Max Bird with that intricate one-touch link-up play that he really brings the best out of everyone, and I think he can unpick teams that way. But as we saw when, I think there was a moment for the first goal, when Jake Cooper, Millwall centre-back, was caught way up the pitch. It might have been an attacking scenario. And so their midfield was a bit out of shape. Their left-back, Joe Bryan, was caught really high up the pitch. And you just had this massive counter-attacking opportunity that Sinclair Armstrong really capitalised on down the right channel. And he's just got this electric pace that must be one of the quickest players in the Championship. And you're able to just unlock it with that pace. And actually that created the goal for the lad who was at Wickham, Anis Mehmeti. It just feels like you've got the means to unlock teams in different ways, which I think is really exciting.
Yeah, and the two you mentioned Armstrong's kind of pace there. He has been brought in mainly for his kind of physical nature and his kind of robustness and his like X factor in a way a little bit. And we've brought in Fally Mayulu, and on the face of it, it might look kind of quite similar profiles, but when you actually see both of them play and one gets brought off for the other, really different players. Yeah. Although Mayulu is much taller than him, he's far quicker and he's a lot more of a technical player. And
Mayulu's much quicker than Armstrong?
Yeah.
That surprises me. I watched the clips of the game against Millwall, and I thought Sinclair Armstrong was absolutely rapid.
Well, both are rapid, but apparently in training, Mayulu's been kind of hit really good numbers in terms of pace. We haven't really seen that because we've played against Millwall, who are low block, and we only saw them for about 25 minutes against Hardy.
I mean, Annie, I from what I've seen, I think Mayulu might be more refined, like as a finisher. Mayulu's placed his shots really well, and I think he's possibly more at a more advanced stage from that point of view. I mean, that goal, I think it might have been the equaliser. It was just lovely, perfect placement, and that's what you want from a centre forward, isn't it?
And his link-up play with Max Bird, no disrespect to Sinclair Armstrong, doesn't feel like he's.
Oh, did you see the one where Max Bird dummied the ball? Was it Bird who dummied the ball and Mayulu played him in, and then it was just lovely link-up play, wasn't it? It was brilliant.
Yeah, look, he's got technical quality, and we've lacked that in the number 9 position in recent years. So it's good to have Mayulu in the building. And I didn't, again, similar to Armstrong, I expected him to have a bit of a slow start as well, not necessarily hit the ground running in terms of goals, but he scored in both games. And completely agree with you. He looks like, on the evidence of only 3 games he's played in, including the cup, he looks like a far better finisher than Armstrong. And obviously there'll be that debate over whether, if Manning is going to stick with this kind of sole number 9, who's going to start. I think you have to look at it in a way of I think it'll be different each game in terms of who we play. So against Millwall, it made sense to play with Armstrong as the starting number 9 because of his pace, because it was, he might wear them down, and then you wear the 2 centre backs down, then you bring on Mayulu with his kind of extra pace as well. So I think you have to think of it as starters and finishers, and not necessarily dropping someone for the other. I think they both can have impacts in the same game. We just have to kind of tweak in terms of who starts depending on the opposition. And I think Manning is looking at it in the same way as well. And well, both of them have done really well, and Max Bird is really, really helping them both out in kind of that number 10 position. And yeah, also want to talk about the quality we brought off the bench on Saturday, because bringing on Scott Twine and Fally Mayulu is a complete sea change, really. And Neil Harris talked about it after the game on Saturday as well. If you look at Millwall's bench compared to Bristol City's bench, it was night and day.
Sure.
I'm aware Millwall, they need a couple more in through the door, but we look really solid as a squad. And finally, we have options in the front region, but we also have an abundance of quality. And look, it's exciting. It's only 2 games in, but I feel much more confident now that we've got a few players in through the door. And I'm just I don't know, just quite happy about the situation at the moment.
For sure. Where was I? I'm curious to ask you about Zach Viner, Annie, because I know over the last couple of seasons, you've talked about him as being one of your favourite players in central defence. Would you still consider him on those terms?
Yeah. Look, we've conceded 4 goals, which is in 2 games, which is not ideal. But I'd say against Millwall, I'd caveat that with the 4 goals by saying against Millwall, it was only a 20-minute spell, and that was really it for Millwall. And they scored 3 goals, and that's not going to happen each and every game. And also, there was a dubious penalty in there, which was just not a penalty. Hit George Tanner's chest, and a late penalty against Hull, which if Joe Williams was 10, 15 games into the season, he wouldn't be making that challenge. So, yeah, you can look at it in different aspects. I think Zach Viner's passing has improved a lot. His diagonals are a lot better. He attempted a lot of those last season as a centre-back, naturally you would, but it felt a bit inconsistent. And this season, whenever Mehmeti and Sykes are free, and they seem to be a lot freer in terms of the positional sense, in a more positional sense, him and Dickey, him Viner in particular, really finding those the players on the flanks and getting a lot of joy from that as well. So I think Zach Viner's kind of ability to play in this Liam Manning system has come on leaps and bounds since he's coming through the door, which is very important because Zach Viner's crucial to Bristol City at the moment. So yeah, I'm still happy with Viner. Just hoping there's no kind of late interest in him from a potential, parachute club in the Championship. But yeah, no problems with Viner at the moment, despite the kind of relatively poor defensive start.
Yeah, for sure. What have Bristol City got to do then to eradicate some of those defensive issues?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because last season I was sitting here saying we need to score more goals, we need to be a bit more free, a bit more attacking, but we also need to do that by not making sure our defensive record, which was very good last season, just completely go. Honestly, I don't know what we can do, because I feel like the personnel there in our back line is as good as we'll get from a Bristol City perspective, in terms of we can't really upgrade on Zach Viner or Rob Dickey. That would cost a lot of money. Same with the fullbacks as well. So I think having Ross McCrory once he comes back from injury will be helpful. I love George Tanner. I think he's a good right back, but just a little bit of a quality upgrade on him when he comes back from injury will be helpful. I think with the way we're starting to play this season, and we talked about those link ups, between Bird and Armstrong and Mayulu.
Sure.
That's all very exciting, but that also means a attack system, and it's about fine tuning the balance, but it's also about finding a way of are we going to win more games by scoring more goals? Are we going to be stoic and having a good shape and winning more games that way? I think we've shown a decent balance, because we showed that towards the back end of last season, where we were quite good at grinding out good 1-0 wins over Leicester and Plymouth later in the season, getting loads of clean sheets. But start of this season, we've looked quite good going forward.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it, Annie? Because we've talked about the benefits of using Max Bird as a number 10 rather than a number 6, because of that link-up play and how that's opened teams up. But actually, if you're looking at defensive balance, you think Jason Knight is very much an energetic presser. He likes to be given freedom to really go and be tenacious and attack the ball. And then you've got Joe Williams, who I would probably think of as a kind of box-to-box midfielder. So actually, would those players work better alongside somebody who's maybe more like a 6 that's going to sit there, as opposed to operating in a sort of freer, more sort of a different role?
Well, it's interesting because I think we started with a double pivot in midfield this season. I think Jason Knight has. Whenever we're building out from the back, Jason Knight's normally been the one that's kind of drifted a little bit wide and kind of tucked in and helped out with the build-up play, and then allowing that ball to go either to fullbacks who are pushed up or to our wingers, which is interesting because I'd normally consider Joe Williams to be that sort of player and allow Jason Knight to kind of occupy those spaces going forward. I'd say Manning wants to play. I'd say Manning probably classes Joe Williams as that number 6 because of his aggressive nature. That penalty at Hull where the challenge was very reckless, and his ability, I think, to win the ball back is probably the best in terms of our starting midfield trio at the moment. So I think he is probably the number 6, but we don't really play with a natural number 6 in a way. We don't really. Even though you do want a balance in midfield, I think we just go with Knight, who is very energetic, box to box, as you said, and Joe Williams, who's involved in attacks a lot, got the assist for the 4th goal on Saturday, but also it's just a little bit more conservative, but not a natural number 6. So we don't, not from what I've noticed, I might be completely wrong. We don't really play with a kind of natural 6, even though Joe Williams is probably more suited to that role. Will be interesting to see whether Manning goes to 2 number 10s and then allows Max Bird to kind of drop in and help a bit more, kind of in terms of freedom, because then that will allow obviously Scott Twine to be in the team, and that's what we really want. So it will be interesting to see whether we stick with this 4-2-3-1 or not. But at the moment it's working relatively well, and we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Scott Twine's a lovely dilemma to have on the bench, and it's whether you. I'm sure that he probably would feel like he's good enough to become the star player, and I think he can probably bring a bit more flair, a bit more pizzazz, a bit more individual stardust, if you like, than maybe Max Bird can. So maybe there is a purpose, like you say, for Max Bird to maybe drop a little bit deeper and have an even greater influence on the game. But like you say, I think you've got a template that's working pretty well at the moment. Talk to me about George Tanner's start to the season, Annie.
It's an interesting one because, well, Tanner's got a place in the squad, in the team at the moment, because McCrory's a guaranteed place in the team at the moment because McCrory's not playing. But some people would argue, and I completely understand this, George Tanner is probably much better in a back four than Ross McCrory is. I think Ross McCrory is more of a natural wing back than he is a full back. I think he's better going forward and has a bit more of an end product. Tanner so far this season hasn't really done anything wrong, but in terms of if you want to take it to that next kind of level, in terms of are we really serious about getting into the top six with a really good squad we've got at the moment, probably one of the best in a long time, since probably we finished 8th, and that's saying something.
Sure.
So in terms of that, if we really are serious, is George Tanner up to that level? I think he's good defensively, even though in the Carabao Cup in midweek he got skinned a little bit. Haji Wright of Coventry. So when you come up against quality players, it's obviously hard. But yeah, I'd say he's a good kind of defender. Going forward, his game has improved from a couple of seasons ago, but it's still not kind of up there in terms of not quite maybe the standard we want it to be. I like George Tanner. I think he's a good fullback and clearly, quite well respected around the dressing room. But it just feels like, is he the necessary kind of the adequate quality we need to go and make another kind of drastic step up in terms of the league positions? So it's a bit of a dilemma. I think it'll be interesting to see how Ross McCrory fares when he comes back from injury, because I think he'd be the kind of starting right back, even though it is in a back four. But yeah, Tanner's responsibility is also kind of dictated by what Campering does on the other side, because a couple of situations there were on Saturday where Campering was just caught high up the pitch.
Oh, right, okay.
And Tanner was then having to, obviously he's in two minds of, well, I can't leave Zach Klein and Rob Dickey alone. So he has to kind of then push back a little bit as well. But when we were pushing for the winner, he was definitely, kind of involved in the attack. So, but maybe not with the adequate quality needed to then, help the team. But it's an interesting one, because clearly Manning wants one fullback to kind of help the defense and make it a 3 in possession, and one of them to go and attack. And that was.
I mean, Annie, we've talked about that when Campering is really high at the pitch, George Tanner's happy to tuck in. What about the inverse? When George Tanner's really high at the pitch, is Campering very good at saying, "All right, I'm going to help out Zach Feiner and Rob Dickey"?
He's not as good as Tanner in terms of doing kind of his defensive awareness. He's more of an attacking minded fullback, a more modern day fullback, if you will. But he's played centre back before quite a bit for Bristol City in a back 3, so he does have that sense in him. Obviously, he's not as good as Tanner was doing as doing that. To answer your question, he's more interested in how we want to kind of get ammunition going forward, and he thinks he can be a part of that, which is ideal, because that's what Liam Manning wants as well. That's what Liam Manning thinks. So he's not as good as Tanner in terms of kind of recovering, but he's got the pace to do so, and he can catch up with most people, most wingers. So yeah, he's not as good as Tanner in terms of his starting position to come back and recover defensively, but he's not awful at it, basically.
So what else are Bristol City going to need, do you think, Annie, in between now and the end of the window?
I think we're fairly settled, to be honest. Yeah. I think we're done in terms of incomings. There was kind of a few murmurings over Luke McNally coming in. Now that kind of seems dead in the water, but it feels like maybe we're targeting potentially kind of vaguely a right-sided centre-back, which makes a little bit of sense, because we're kind of lacking that at the moment. We've only really got Zach Viner and Rob Dickey, who are kind of right-footed centre-backs, but Rob Dickey plays on the left-hand side and is better on the left-hand side of a defence. We've got loads of options on the left-hand side of a defence from Atkinson, Cal Naismith, Hayden Roberts can play there as well. So we've got options there, but maybe lacking a little bit on the right-hand side. But in terms of incomings, I think we're done. Outgoings will be interesting to see, because we've got loads of options in the forward region now, and that also means some players are not going to get much game time. Some like Josh Stokes potentially goes out on loan. If Harry Cornick is not going to be involved, at all, then he's probably going to leave. But that's going to be a matter of who wants to.
Yeah, maybe that's about the right time for Harry Cornick to be offloaded. He's played a respectable part for Bristol City, but maybe if you're looking at getting to the next level, does he match up to somebody like a Fally Mayulu, a Sinclair Armstrong? There's players that are either better in terms of quality or similar level in quality, but with more potential. So maybe now's the time for someone like Harry Cornick to go, and maybe Josh Stokes to be loaned out.
Yeah, it's a shame with Cornick because he was at his best at Luton with Adebayo up top.
Sure.
And now we've got two really good, kind of physical, kind of similar profiles to Adebayo, but we're not playing two up top with Cornick kind of in there. So it's a shame, and it's a kind of case of what if we played him and a kind of big man up top regularly under Nigel Pearson and then also Liam Manning. But yeah, doesn't feel like he hasn't really produced on a consistent basis for City, so that makes sense as well. And then we've got kind of youngsters who the youngsters we've wanted to send out on loan. We've done that kind of already. Yeah, likes of Ephraim Yeboah, Jamie Knight-Labelle, who've both gone to League Two, and Seb Palmer Holden, who's gone to the Scottish Premiership, and he started quite well actually. So yeah, kind of majority of the business we've already kind of concluded. It was just the kind of Tommy Conway. We're waiting for him to go, and then that would have meant Scott Twine to come in. That was just the only thing that took a bit of a delay. But apart from that, I think we're fairly settled as a squad, which is great. And now it's time for Liam Manning, I think, to produce.
Certainly is. Confident for top 10?
Yes, I'm confident for top 10. I think I'm also thinking a little bit higher than that at the moment. I think, and I don't necessarily say that. But I don't say that like just as a reaction to the first two games. I'm saying that because I really do believe the squad has got a lot of quality, and I know a lot of people have been talking about Sunderland and whether I know you predicted them to be top, didn't you? But I know there's a lot of people have been talking about Sunderland and their kind of young players and the quality they've got. And now they've had a little bit of experience in there and now got a good manager in there as well. I think a lot of people are not seeing our squad and going, there's a lot of really good young players in there who have got a hell of a lot of potential. And we've also got a few experienced players in there who have been in the Championship for a while. And also the young players that we do have at the moment, likes of, maybe a Cam Pring or a Max Bird or a Jason Knight, got a hell of a lot of experience in the Championship. So I feel like we've got a fairly underrated, I don't like that word at all. We've got a fairly underrated squad that
underestimated squad.
A little bit of an underrated. I think in a lot of people's eyes, we're still kind of, boring Bristol City.
Mid-table Bristol City, yeah.
Still in the middle. We'll find a way, we might beat Burnley or something, but we'll just find a way to just land in 12th. But I think we've got a lot more excitement, especially with the manager we've got now and the football we're starting to play. I think that's finally coming to fruition a little bit. So I'm really excited about maybe more than top 10.
Well, there we go. Brilliant stuff. Everyone go check out AH Robin Talk on YouTube. Annie, thanks for talking to us.
No worries, Kev. Thanks.
Brilliant stuff. Annie Harris there from Bristol City. Delighted now to be joined by Ollie Collins of Blackburn Rovers, Jolly Ollie on TikTok. Ollie, thanks so much for joining me this evening. Really appreciate your time. Has it caught you by surprise that Blackburn Rovers' goal-laden start to the campaign?
Yeah, it's been impressive so far. There wasn't a weight of expectation when we first came into the season. I think we spoke about that for a few weeks ago. 12 goals in 3 games. We were looking where the goals were going to come from when our Sammy would leave, but we've got Yuki's in there. Gay got one during the week, so I'm quite confident that the goals are definitely going to come from elsewhere.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it, Ollie? Because I think what was probably good is that before Sammy Smodics left, you had that 4-2 victory over Derby, which, although Smodic scored and assisted in that one, it felt like there were other players who could really threaten. And then you had that 6-1 win at Stockport, which again, Smodic did score in that, but there were goals from other players. And I think you've got 7 goal scorers so far this season. So I think that kind of shows that there's players who can really carry a threat for Blackburn Rovers, and that's probably taken some of the pressure, or maybe taken some of the fear off the lot of Smodics.
We have done. We've heard all summer of it up from the rivals, them lot down the road. Just had to endure 15, 20 minutes of Burnley fans massaging the Regal about spending £250 million being in the Championship. But there we are. But look, Blackburn always seem to get one player, and historically who comes through is the shining light, but then gets sold on. Necessarily doesn't go on to bigger and better things, but we do wish Sammy obviously all the best. And I will always argue that I still think the fee is a lot lower. For me, that fee should be at least touching your £15 million mark. But, even on Friday, I think Rovers fan accepted he was going to go. Came on Friday, got a hell of an elevation. It was brilliant to see him. And he still did the business. And I can't speak for what Stockport County squad's like during the week, but, yet again, you can only beat what's put in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
A good 6 goals. It was impressive. It was quick. Eustace has spoke about people obviously chipped in this season. And last season, look, I don't think we're going to get a season like it again. Technically, we had 1 player scoring half our goals. So it has given me a hell of a bit of confidence. There is no expectation with Rovers. I've heard all the other ones about top 6 and top 10, top 2. Okay, you should be getting top 2 because you spend a lot of money. So, Rovers have no expectation. We've got enough going off the field. And I thought, and credit where it's due, that might have resonated with the players. And obviously, they can use that as an excuse. Eustace has done wonders in terms of sort of transfer market, whether it be himself in recruitment or something else. And so far, these gems are starting to come through for us. So it's looking good at the moment.
Certainly is. Yuki Ahashi is the one that has really caught my eye. He's actually come off the bench in the 2 league games, but he still made a real impression. And it's that agility, I guess, that he's got, that movement, that he can have a stooping header as well, which scored one of those against Norwich. And he just looks like a real handful, doesn't he?
I love the way, Gabby, he arrives late. And when he came on against Derby, he had a lot of energy about him. I've spoken before about sometimes sort of the Asian sort of players who, when you see him, whether it be through Japan or lots of bags of energy saved in him. He scored his goal against Derby, and usually, say the keeper comes out and saves that, maybe his confidence is not flourishing as it is now, but he dinks it over with ease.
Oh, it was a lovely finish, wasn't it?
And then the goal against Norwich, and a well-taken goal, by the way, during the week against Stockport. Puts himself, he shouldn't be winning a header, really. He's one of the smallest guys, but he puts himself there. But yet again, against Norwich, he's, Shane Duffy and Grant Hanley, 2 big defenders, and somehow they close a gap and he ventures forward right in the last minute. Brilliant. I love the fact that he just peels away from his striker. It's like I said, he could be the gem that he's going to come through for us this season. There are obviously as well, it's been rumoured, I don't think it's been confirmed yet, that we've got another Japanese star coming through. So Rovers are dipping their toes into Tokyo at the moment. Okay, so that doesn't mean we're going to be selling sushi rather than butter pies anytime soon. Okay, right? But like I said, there's more optimism definitely now here at Ewood Park, and this is only 3 games into a season.
Yeah, it's do you know what? As a Birmingham City fan, John Eustace did a similar job for us, because I wrote us off before the 22-23 campaign because I thought we've got no depth, we've got ownership issues, and he managed to galvanise the whole club, the fan base, the players. He kept a really happy ship behind the scenes, and we managed to kind of put our ownership issues aside, really, and we finished 17th. And I just feel like he could be doing. I did before the season season I said Blackburn bottom because of the ownership problems, and I know.
I saw your apology video, so don't worry about it. So we'll let you off.
I'm already regretting it, Ollie. But whatever I said, whatever I did, I didn't mean it.
Throwing a quote out there, yeah.
Absolutely. But no, I think he just seems to be doing a similar thing, Ollie, in terms of just galvanising the club in a difficult situation.
I was getting a lot of scrutiny when he came in sort of last year because he didn't actually have that initial manager bounce.
Yeah,
Come in, the 2-3 games. His first game I spoke about was actually Damien Johnson, and he merely just turned up at half-time, but he never had a chance to get on the training pitch and implement his style. And he had a bunch of players which he jumped into his job. It's his second job really, and it was a case of we had a JDT who's completely different style play, okay, which Rovers fans we did enjoy, but obviously JDT went his own way. Eustace, to be fair, used to say a lot of things after matches. Like I remember drawing games 1-1, thinking, I'm so frustrated that I'm not seeing anything which is making me think we're going to get out of this hole. And he kept talking about unity and togetherness, and it was really griping me because I was sat there thinking, what that. And no, I need someone to put the ball in the back of the net. I don't need to be patting people on the back and telling them how good they are. But if truth be told, the results came. And as we spoke about a couple, weeks ago, when we got the biggest result against Leeds United, and then we got the one against Sunderland, and I think that is now carried on. If you look at our results, even like obviously the back end of the season, the draw against Coventry, the win against Leicester City, to come in against Derby, and then to get a decent point against Norwich, and so far, pending more bodies through the door, I think Rovers will have a productive season without any sort of. Well, the ceiling's high for us. We don't. If we finish, in my eyes, we finish above the relegation zone. I'll take that because of all the off-field matters. If anything higher is an absolute bonus in my eyes.
Yeah, and then the dream would be ideally a change of ownership that with the right support for somebody like John Eustace, because I'm maybe with the right. Maybe with the right investment, he's somebody who, or the right sort of backing, he could possibly deliver a top 10 team at this level.
Because he came from sort of like the Tony Pulis person, I assumed that would be the kind of type of football we would be playing.
Yeah.
And I mean, Derby, look, the first game of the season, they were potentially I even said in one of my videos, I thought they were going to be the potential banana skin.
Yeah,
coming up from League One, Rovers have been there before and have that sort of momentum and carry them. Obviously, they got the result against Borough rather than us this weekend just gone. But I was impressed, and a lot of fans around me were like, wow, I wasn't expecting this. Players playing with maybe a bit of freedom. I don't know what he said to them in the changing room. I don't think yet again he's allowed them to flourish. I love Ryan Hedges. I think he's a great carrier of the ball, comes in really good on his left and his right. Dolan's sitting in the middle. Probably Rovers fans will argue, does he sit in the middle, go wide? But yet again, there's a guy, has been reported at times. I understand the frustration, like when you come through the door, what was initially said, was it to keep Rovers up? But was he told if we were to keep us up, can he actually go and rebuild in the summer? Now, by the looks of it, and this is Rovers, at the moment now, got a bit of money in the bank. Can we spend the money? Do we have to keep it because of the pending court date, which is actually tomorrow, which is my daughter's birthday? So please don't spoil that for me, please. So there's more optimism that we're now getting linked with Jay Stansfield, for nearly 5-6 million.
No, surely you're not going to pay that sort of money in your
but this is the thing, Gab, kind of thing. We've come away from this, living within our means. All of a sudden we get this, and I've said this to Rovers fans, like when you go out and buy someone or when you sell them kind of thing, you don't have this luxury of this £11 million. A lot of that's for wages, for costs. It's all included in everything else. But there's got to be some, giveaway where we can actually go out and spend some money. That might be loan wages. I don't know. But yes, I do think that Eustace under a good ownership model, okay, a good ownership model would do, really well. And hopefully, even if he's on a budget this season, I think he'll be the right man. And if even it is that for a season, and we get to the end of the season, there's still no change of ownership models. Well, no, we would ever begrudge a man to walk away from a job if he feels like he's not getting what he's wanted, been asked to do, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. He's certainly doing a great job at the moment. Any other key players that you'd pick out that we've not mentioned yet from your first 3 games?
I mean, Travis coming back in,
Yeah.
he's been brilliant. The rumours going around potentially that Hull City are potentially going to put like a £3 million bid in for him. For me, it's a definite no. If anything, I think £3 million is an insult. I still think the Sammy fee was lower, but I think Rover's got kind of, bullied into that one purely because of our financial situation, the Championship, and we're up against. And that's kind of insulting from a team who's just been promoted as well. But he's been essential. Last year we didn't have a leader. He kind of changed armbands from Hyam to Simonics. I can't, probably another couple of people being captains as well, maybe Tronstad at one point. But he's been the leader. You could see his passion on the last 2 games, merely just pulling people into right positions, dictating really well. Yeah, Travis for me has been good. There's still questions about
carrier, isn't he, as well?
Yeah, exactly. Tronstad just sitting in behind him as well does really wonders. And I still say it and say that's what we missed last season. We just missed our captain. Unfortunately, he got pushed out of the football club. So for me, it's been a new signing. And
Right.
like I said, Yuki, I want to know how you score that goal. Brilliant. We've got a big lad in Martak Gay, which hopefully, apologies, Bros fans, have butchered the pronunciation. Yet again, a big lad, 6 foot. He's great up front for sort of feeding off to. He allows Hedges to go up the width or Dolan either side.
Yeah.
Callum Britton, I quoted the other day, 2 assists already in 2 games. So, brilliant in terms of, delivering and assists. There's a lot of good things at the moment. Don't get me wrong, the bubble could be easily burst, and the one thing that Rovers want out of this, and it's a lot to ask, right? But we just want to beat them on the 31st. You know what I mean? It's like of all the things to be doing, everything else like that, we just we look forward to the 31st of August, and believe me, we'll take a win and finish in 21st. That'll keep us happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you can at one point you can win the league at Turf Moor to get them back.
It was only a Sports Direct Cup they technically won anyway, you know what I mean? Until you've been Premier League champions and you've rubbed shoulders with the best in the Champions League and you've won a League Cup and everything else, then that's ain't nothing really, is if you think about it.
Fair. Listen, Ollie, thanks so much for talking to us. I really appreciate your time, mate. Hope you've enjoyed this EFL Debate Championship podcast. Thanks to all of you for watching at home, and we'll see you again next Monday. Get subscribed, by the way.